Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me, and thank you for ISOG for having us. Mabuhay and magandang hapon. I'm actually Filipino. I'm actually based in Sydney, but I'm here to represent OKTA. So before I start, maybe raise of hands. Anyone here an OKTA customer or heard of OKTA? No? Yes? One? Yes. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So again, I'm not here to sell OKTA, right? Because I know this was the protocol that was sent to us by ISOG. I'm here more to educate actually you guys what we can provide. So my topic today is more on this: how can you basically balance security and usability to make sure that it goes hand in hand in your digital transformation journey, right? So first question I have for everyone is that we live in a very complex world right now, where we're looking at two things: security and usability. When I mean security and usability, how do you make sure that you employ that same two things to your workforce, yung mga nagtatrabaho, and the consumers, mga customer natin? How do we make sure that any changes that you apply on the security actually gives the least friction impact to every user, right? Because at the end of the day, no one's basically want to do no one's going to adopt a service if they're basically being challenged for a hard time, right, logging in. So let's go with stats. So 80% of attacks are coming from credential abuse. That's coming from Verizon. So basically what I mean credential abuse, these are basically password spray, brute force attack. Basically, these are threat actors trying to use compromised password they steal in the dark web to access your own accounts, whether it's an employee account or a workforce account. So what did the industry do to solve this problem? We put MFA. So I think everyone here has already been using an MFA, right? Some sort of MFA. Either isang text message, push notification, Google Authenticator, it's still MFA. So that's what the industry has done. As you can see, 92% of phishing attacks were blocked by MFA. That's from Google. 99% of automated credential-based attacks were also blocked again. So as you can see, there's a lot of benefits of doing MFA, right? But the challenge of MFA right now is there's three challenges it basically presents to every security leader. When I mean here, it's like, what's the first challenge? First is, how do you make sure that when you're layering MFA, how do you make sure that it doesn't compromise the user experience? How do you make sure users, whether workforce, customers, can still log in properly? And also make sure that it doesn't basically create friction, such that they don't stop either from buying a service or basically adopting your service. A good example would be, imagine, right? I think everyone here has tried to buy Taylor Swift tickets, right? Imagine, right? You got into the queue, suddenly, last part, you get charged for MFA. After successfully verifying MFA, they say, sorry, wala nang ticket. Ano gagawin nyo? Mainis kayo, di ba? Ano ba to? So yun yung challenge, right? How do you basically layer security from UX? Then, I know that right now, most of the providers use SMS as MFA, right? The challenge with SMS MFA is introduce costs. And as a leader, you don't want to be introducing unnecessary costs. That's why we don't want to find other MFA authenticators or forms of mechanism that will not introduce costs. And lastly, how do you make sure that MFA is only challenged when it's needed? Because at the end of the day, we always use the same device, we use the same network, and we log in at a certain period of time. What if we can use that behavior to make sure that if something changes drastically, that's the only time we challenge MFA? So that's as you can see, right? All leaders are now juggling privacy, convenience, and security. And as a leader, if you drop one, it costs millions of dollars. So let's now look at what we're going to share. Again, what we're going to share is what we call the OKTA Secure Sign-In Trends Report. This is a publicly downloadable report that we, OKTA, provide to everyone. You can download it. And basically what the report does is basically it gives you some statistics from OKTA customers. What have they used from a MFA standpoint? What was the highest MFA adoption that was used? Which industry which actually has used MFA much all the time? And what was the stats we captured when we're challenging users for MFA? So this is what my talk is all about. So let's look at the first report. MFA adoption continues to climb. We're already done with the post-pandemic. But again, as you can see, everyone's back to the office. We're back here attending the conference with ISOG. But as you can see, right, A lot of companies are still allowing some of their employees to work from home. Meaning that with that scenario, they need MFA, some sort of MFA. And what we found out is 64% of users authenticate with MFA. One thing we want to be proud of is all OKTA administrators have 90% implemented MFA. That shows that OKTA makes sure any administrator or any highly privileged administrator gets MFA before they can access the admin console. So let's now look at which industry adopted MFA. So there's a lot of industries, right? Technology, education. So I think everyone here represents some sort of industry. So as you can see, the highest adopter of MFA is actually the technology company, startups, or if you're selling technology services, that's where you are. Because they're more immersed with technology, right? The second one will be insurance companies because they deal with private information of their customers. The last one will be more of the warehousing because there's more, I would say, makalumang paraan, di ba? Kung paano sila operate. But as you can see, most of the industries here have some sort of implemented MFA. So you can see, right? If you fall in some of those industries, you might have some sort of MFA, right? The next thing that we're going to talk about is, or I'm going to share, is basically what are the adoption size of the company organizations have implemented MFA. The highest adoption organizations who adopted MFA are basically companies that are small. You might wonder why. Because if you're a smaller company, it's easier to roll it out. Lesser people, lesser applications, easier to make sure the traction goes. Larger companies have a harder time because they have more resources, more change management control, more applications, a lot of this fragmented applications in the directory. Meaning users might have multiple MFAs, right? Imagine that. So that's the reason why larger companies have a hard time implementing MFA. So, question now, trivia, right? Which is the most adopted MFA? So as we've seen in the market, a lot of organizations who adopted MFA with OKTA, the first place goes to push. Meaning there's like a yes or no when you're being prompted for MFA on your phone, right? I think Facebook does that right now. Google does that right now. Second place is traditionally SMS. People still rely on SMS because everyone still would want to use an SMS. I would say in the Philippines, I think even though there are a lot of people are using smartphones, there's still some population that prefer to use not a smartphone. And lastly, soft token, right? Soft token is basically you type in the code, right? Because that's how it started back then. Then the next topic I want to share is basically looking at security and user experience. People say that they're always exclusive. They're not exclusive. They're inclusive. Meaning they go hand in hand. So what you can see, right? The one thing we have seen is that the more secure the experience is, the more highly adopted the authenticator is. And then as you can see, even though passwords are still there, a lot of the chart there saying that anything that uses a web button or a modern authenticator, the usability score goes higher. It means that the more stronger the security authenticator is, the more usable it is. Because a lot of our hardware right now, or endpoint devices, are using more modern devices. One thing I want to ask now to the forum is that, what do you think is based on the stat, right? You can see, right, the enrollment time. Like you see, if you're setting up a new account and setting a password, it takes 34 seconds. 34 seconds of your life. Imagine, right? You can do a lot in 34 seconds. So if we look at other MFA factors or authenticators, the highest one that takes a while to enroll is security questions, 40 seconds. So you may wonder, SMS seconds, then OKTA's is basically on the blue one. It takes 33 seconds, right? You might wonder, like, it's too long. The reason why it's too long is because we're actually, in a single enrollment, we're enrolling 3 types of factors. One factor will be your OTP. One factor will be the push. And one factor, which recently NIST has announced, is phishing-resistant authenticators. So that's basically allowing everyone to take advantage of a single enrollment, 3 factors in one go. So let's now look at the challenge time. From a challenge time, from 33 seconds enrollment time, right? Look, for a user to type in a username and password, it takes 13 seconds. To type in an SMS, it takes 13 seconds again, right? So look at OKTA's approach now. From 33 seconds enrollment time, we went down with 4 seconds challenge time. What does that mean for everyone? It means that once you get OKTA as your MFA, basically people save a lot of time from being challenged for MFA. And that means you get to do more. And that saves you more money as well from an organization standpoint. So from a failure rate, this is basically if an MFA fails or not. You can see, right? People still forget their password, most likely. If you haven't used your password for a long time, if you went to a vacation, that's the error rate, 8.4%. But for OKTA, again, given everything can be done through passwordless as well, we can reduce the failure rate to 1.6%. So let's now look at the phishing resistance security benefits I mentioned earlier, right? So you can see, right, there's basically two topics I want to cover. First is basically the coverage and the alert coverage. So phishing resistant is basically what NIST recently introduced, meaning that there's a new breed of authenticators. This could be authenticators that have an ability to detect if the user is being attempted with a phishing event. So most likely everyone here has received some sort of email, SMS na nag-try sa inyo na mag-phish. Like, enter mo yung password mo kasi kailangan ng mother mo ng pera. Parang ganun, di ba? So imagine, right? People get lured to this. So with phishing-resistant authenticators, what it does, once a user gets redirected to that phishing site, basically, phishing-resistant authenticators has this quality to detect that this page is a falsely generated page. This is basically trying to lure you to enter your details. And your job, and the job of the phishing-resistant authenticators is to prevent you from moving forward and also making awareness that this is a false page, such that you don't go to that prone of accident typing your username and password. And from there, everything scrolls over, right? So right now, phishing-resistant benefits for OKTA is actually at 94%. Because of this new capability we announced, we're able to apply phishing-resistant qualities in our MFA capabilities. WebAuthn, if everyone's using Face ID, Touch ID, or your face, that's also WebAuthn. From alert coverage, this is what OKTA has invested a lot, is we actually want to create end-user awareness. In the end of the day, what's the way to prevent phishing? User awareness. Because in the end of the day, if users are really aware of what they're doing and what they're getting into, that's allowing them to basically prevent phishing. And that also allows organization to make sure any employee is not leaking out data from their end, right? So for OKTA, we're able to cover that with 100% because our authenticator actually promotes that. The reason we don't have WebAuthn right now is because WebAuthn, as for privacy reasons, doesn't share that. So overall, I would say, what are the key takeaways from the report, right? So key takeaway, security, user experience aren't mutually exclusive. They go hand in hand. As you can see from the chart earlier, the higher the stronger the authenticator, the better the experience, people adopt it. MFA adoption soared to secure remote work, which is still ongoing, right? Tech companies lead the way in MFA, meaning that if you're a tech company, most likely you have already MFA. Smaller organizations have rolled out MFA faster because it's much more easier. Larger organizations takes time. It's still early days for passwordless, but remember, if you're an early adopter, it means that you're already preparing for the future. And lastly, phishing-resistant authenticators are on the rise. It means that it's already available. It's just a matter of time using it. I think that's my presentation, and thank you. Thank you, everyone.